Calling all readers and bookaholics, the very stupid host of this show has decided to branch off into the literary world and pen his own follow-up to the critically acclaimed fly-tying true crime novel, The Feather Thief by Kirk Wallace Johnson. The sequel nobody asked for, especially Kirk Wallace Johnson, is called The Great Zonker Caper, and it's coming to a bookstore near you. In Marty's hair-raising follow-up novella, the main character, Edwin Rist, who is famously busted for stealing birds from a natural history museum, has paid his fines and has moved on from his embarrassing early life of crime, but he simply can't shake the nagging urge to steal fly-tying materials. Instead of a museum in England, this time he finds himself deep in the Ozarks hunting for a prized collection of albino squirrel pelts being hoarded by a mysterious hillbilly gang. He wants those pelts bad so he can bring them home and cut them into zonker strips and dye them any color he pleases. This is the only way his leeches will ever be one of a kind. The Great Zonker Caper takes readers on a wild adventure through dangerous land and crossing paths with all sorts of interesting characters. Edwin even eats squirrel meat for the first time and doesn't vomit or have diarrhea. Brought to you by the same publishing team that brought you the Podcaster's Manual. This tome is also on sale for $1 per page, and at just under 400 pages, it's a high-value title. Pre-order your copy today at amazon.com/thegreatzonkercaper/epub.pdf/downloading/epub.pdf/downloaded today.
Hello out there. It's me.
It's me.
Your dear friend Mark.
I don't know who you are.
I'm telling you right here.
Here once again to hack together a bunch of bullshit about tying flies and fishing and whatever else I feel like into the show that I call Secret Society of Fly Tyers.
If you can handle that, give me a hell yeah.
Hell yeah!
All right.
I use the term show really lightly because what the hell is this? I'm not really looking for an answer. I'm just shouting into the digital void. It's where I operate best, after all, in the void. Nothing is too stupid in the void, and that's a big part of what has driven me to make these shows. The urge to be stupid. The older I get, the more I realize how important being stupid and laughing is. I hope that you do too.
We do, Mark. We all actually think you're so cute and smart when you act stupid.
There's another natural urge that pretty much every dedicated angler has, and that is to someday make it to Alaska to witness its wild beauty.
Alaska is an eagle that I want to fly across the sea of castles, reaching for the sky. Alaska is the part of me left unexplored. Alaska is the warming sun on a misty dawn. She is a mystery that I will never tame. She is Alaska. Alaska is her name.
That's why I interviewed my buddy J.D. Richey for this episode. He's spent a lot of time there, whipping a jet boat around the waters of the Togiak River, helping anglers live out what is often at the top of their bucket list, catching wild salmon in Alaska, alongside hungry grizzly bears doing the same thing.
Lord, I do not want to be hurt by a bear. I do not.
The mosquitoes there, that are almost as big and as mean as grizzly bears, don't really give a shit about the salmon, outside of the fact that the salmon draw in delicious humans for them to feast on. Two other natural urges that everyone has are, 1. To grab a goose by the neck and either strangle it or whip it around your head a few times like a lasso, and or 2. Yank a cat's tail off. I told you in the last episode that mice regrow their tails like lizards do when they lose them. Maybe cats do too. We aren't even allowed to try and prove this true or false. Wily animal rights activists keep shutting down my GoFundMe pages that I make in my feeble attempts to raise the money I'd need to study this in a scientific environment with trained professionals. So the public will likely never know the truth. No one out there besides me is willing to put their neck on the line for this research.
That's why we'll always have your back, Marty. Ride or die.
Speaking of necks, I don't even think I need to expand on the goose thing. One attacked my grandpa when he was a younger man, and one attacked my buddy Steve's dad just last year. It did some serious damage, too.
People talk about cats being sort of the pawns of the devil. I think it's geese.
He captured this footage of a goose attacking a swimmer Saturday afternoon at Barton Springs.
They hiss, they're evil, And God gave them the most squeezable, rope-like necks in all of the animal kingdom for a reason. Is there anyone out there that enjoys the sound of a goose honk? The honk only beckons you to give in to your natural urge and grab their neck even more. There are unfortunately geese in Alaska, so like they often do for me on my home river, there's a good chance the sound of their annoying honk might interrupt the silence that you were hoping to experience during your future trip to the last frontier. Alaska seems like it could get real quiet too, which is very appealing to me. It's becoming increasingly hard for me to achieve quiet no matter where I go. Alaska seems like a place where you could see for miles around you in every direction and not hear or see anyone or anything.
Hello.
A cold, moon-like landscape, ready to remind us all of how easy we have it back home in our warm 2014 Toyota Priuses. Would I end up finding it unsettling to exist in such a quiet place? So quiet that I can hear my blood pumping and ligaments stretching. I kind of miss my kids saying, "Hey Dad, look at this" already, and I haven't even gotten to Alaska yet.
The small man in the glasses who wanted nothing but time. Now just a part of a smashed landscape. Just a piece of the rubble. Just a fragment of what man has deeded to himself. In the Twilight Zone.
The quiet in Alaska may also seem kind of ominous and unsettling to me because of the many weird stories that come out of the area. I remember reading about HARP almost 20 years ago. You know, the Alaskan antenna farm that may or may not play a part in controlling the weather and other natural disasters like earthquakes and wildfires, along with alleged mass mind control. HARP stands for High Frequency Active Oral Research Program, and it was established in 1993 in Gakona, Alaska, probably by U.S. government or military lizards. People don't stop with this one and continue to blame all kinds of things on it. Is there any truth to it? A group of people referred to as experts told AAP Fact Check that HARP has no impact on the troposphere or stratosphere where planes fly and weather occurs, period. But isn't that exactly what they'd print to throw us off the trail?
Of course, Matty boy.
I make up sources all the time. I ask my friends to pretend to be fake scientific professionals for my show whenever I need one. It's only one friend, actually. I beat the same joke into the ground over and over again because it still makes me laugh. Why wouldn't the military and intelligence groups lie to us now so they can keep doing what they want, how they want to, for a while longer? Look at MKUltra as an example. Moving on to other Alaska weirdness, you know there's a community of Yeti or whatever out there. I don't even need to drill down too deep on this one. There aren't many better places for a snow Bigfoot to live without being noticed. I'm not sure the people who live in Alaska would even care. Bigfoot families probably show up and get in line at the Yeti Dogs food truck just like everyone else.
I'm Peter Kane, president of the Bigfoot community. President of the Bigfoot community. President of the Bigfoot community. This is gorgeous documentation, and the sounds of its environment are incredible. That right there is a large fish that mermaids use to transport themselves long distances.
I think I mentioned it in my very first interview with Alaska resident and owner of Midnight Sun Custom Flies, Jonathan Farmer, but Tom DeLong has been talking about a, quote, underground pyramid in Alaska since at least September of 2021. He claims it's bigger than Giza and has been studied by government and intelligence officials for years. He touched on it during an appearance on the Peer Pleasure podcast, saying that the defense contractors in charge of the research project believe it may be somehow suppressing human consciousness.
There's a pyramid and it's underground, and they've been studying it for decades. Yeah, it's
Where?
bigger than Giza. It's not that far from Valdez, I believe. And I know a very important person from the Pentagon that met with one of the lead defense contractors that were studying it, and they told him, they said, "We think we finally know what it's doing. It's turned on. We think it's suppressing consciousness." That's what he said.
After an earthquake scientist supposedly noticed an anomaly in seismographic data that located this pyramid structure, they dug tunnels to find it and have been studying it ever since. Tom isn't the only member of the UFO community that has made this strange claim either. Peabody Award winner and longtime UFO researcher Linda Moulton Howe has been talking about it for even longer than Tom has, and she claims it's about 50 miles from Mount McKinley. There's even a real recent missing person story about a man named Nathan Campbell that went on a personal expedition to find this pyramid in 2020 and was never heard from again. It possibly ties in with a pretty crazy story that psychic co-pioneer of the remote viewing program Ingo Swann told in his book Penetration as well. Ingo writes of being asked if he'd like to see a UFO and being taken on a strange Learjet by a government agent named Axelrod and a strange pair of twins to a dark landing strip in the middle of nowhere. That, thanks to Reddit sleuths, was found to most likely be a runway near Lake Minchumina. After landing, they take a van for about 2 hours, and then they walk 40 minutes to a location where they wait to see this UFO. I'll pull a quick quote from Ingo's book to let him describe what he saw. There we were, 4 of us, sitting silently like rocks. Suddenly, the 2 twins gave a hand signal, and Axel whispered, "It has begun." I couldn't see anything unusual at all, save for what appeared to be some gray fog forming up in the direction of the lake. I thought it was just morning fog coming up. This fog continued forming for about 5 minutes, and suddenly I saw what had begun. For in a moment's eye flicker, the gray fog changed, first into luminous neon blue, and then into this angry purple. A network of purple, red, and yellow lightning bolts shot in all crazy directions through the cloud, and then there it was. Somewhat transparent at first, but in the next second, as if fading up out of nowhere, there it was. Solidly visible over the lake, whose reflecting waters I could now clearly see. And it was getting bigger. I don't really know what I expected, but I had assumed that what I would see, if anything, would be something like a flying saucer. No chance of a saucer here, baby, because it was triangular and at its top angle sort of inverted in pulses, and overall it appeared to be a diamond shape. At that moment, in my astonishment, we could hear a wind coming, and it moved past us like a tangible magnetic field, rustling the pine trees around us so much that some cones and branches fell on us. Ruby red laser-like beams began shooting out from this thing, which incredibly was now growing even bigger while still stationary in its original position over the lake. The scene he describes is pretty wild and is said to take place in the same general area as the supposed underground pyramid, known amongst weirdos like me as the Alaskan Triangle. If psychic weirdness and UFOs ring your bell like they do mine, I recommend you check out the book. He went on to describe his last sight of the silent floating diamond as it pulled the water out of the lake upward like a waterfall being sucked into the machine. For about a week when I was in 8th grade, I woke up with a perfect circle imprinted on the palm of my hand that was a little smaller than 2 inches in diameter. I was as terrified as I imagine Ingo was while he watched that weird craft gravity bong water out of the lake. I was being abducted by aliens every night while the rest of my family slept and no one could do anything about it. The thoughts of what they might be doing to me or where they might be taking me was making me lose sleep and was starting to affect my schoolwork. The mysterious abductors even left their telltale sign for me to see every morning. My paranoid teen brain eventually put together that the circle was an imprint of the top of the shower diverter on the faucet of the bathtub that I leaned on every morning when I turned the water on to start my day. Fire in the sky kind of screwed me up for a little while, okay? Anyway, we've really only dipped our toes into the ocean of Alaska weirdness. Have you heard of Talking Ear Boy?
No, but I hope you tell us right now because it sounds weird, cool, and believable.
This Alaskan phenomenon is said to be some type of spiritual possession that happens to young Alaskan children and manifests itself by somehow morphing the inflicted child's ear into a mouth that speaks. Hey, it's me, Talking Ear Boy. Hey, kid, it's me, Talking Ear Boy. I definitely didn't just make a cheap attempt at an origin story for a weird thing that I do to my own kids by pinching one of their ears together into a little taco-type shape and using it as a puppet. Every kid loves it. Try it for yourself. Please don't try it on children you don't know already, though, because it's weird and stupid.
Hello, real cops? Yes, I'd like to register a complaint.
I like to threaten Talking Ear Boy when he shows up and act like I'm going to brush his teeth or fill his mouth up with dirt, which is obviously my kid's ear hole. I don't think my kids actually enjoy it at any moment, but I do, and that's what matters. Did you really think I was going to get through an episode without making up a story?
Not really.
I really half-assed it this time, but I still did it. Here are some real facts about the Togiak area. Established in 1980, the Togiak National Wildlife Refuge covers 4.7 million acres of fish and wildlife habitat. It's home to 3 major river systems comprising over 1,500 miles of water: the Togiak, Connectoc, and Good News. The Good News is one of my favorite names of any river, but that's a totally different episode. More than 1 million salmon return to these waters each year to spawn. The northern 2.3 million acres of the refuge are designated as a wilderness area. The Togiak Wilderness covers about half of the refuge. Over 200 species of birds have been seen on the Togiak Refuge, and it's home to 48 different mammals. Land mammals include wolves, moose, brown and black bears, coyotes, Canadian lynx, Arctic fox, muskrat, wolverines, red fox, boa constrictors, marmot, beaver, marten, 2 species of otter, and porcupine, and apparently more because I didn't name off 48 mammals there, and I might have slipped in a reptile. The community of Togiak is located at the head of Togiak Bay, 67 miles west of Dillingham, Alaska, within the refuge. As of the 2020 census, its population sat at 817. The city's economic base is primarily commercial salmon, herring, and herring roe on kelp fisheries. Anglers come from far and wide to wet their lines in Togiak's waters. My friend and guest today, J.D. Richey, has spent enough of his time guiding folks that travel there to almost call himself a resident at this point. He may not be some fancy Victorian salmon fly tyer. In fact, he definitely isn't one of those. He is what we refer to as a lifer. He's a true waterman, and if you've ever been lucky enough to fish with him, you'll quickly understand how much he loves doing it. I've had high fish count days with him and been brutally skunked too. On those polar opposite days, I had the same amount of fun and learned an equal amount from JD. It's no wonder he's so well respected out there by anglers of all types. We talked for a long time, so strap in and maybe get a snack or a beverage. Here's the chat I had with JD Richey earlier this winter. JD, thanks for joining me on the program, dude. I'm sure you knew that I'd be coming for you as soon as I told you that I started this silly show. And you've been a sensei of sorts for me as I've kind of wandered around the fishing world looking for my place as an angler. And you were my first guide that I ever hired. And
you never forget your first one.
Right. I've definitely been on your boat more than I've been out with any other guide. I've been spin fishing with you, pulled plugs, thrown bobbers. We fly fished the Yuba River, and we even resulted to a dirty, almost unspoken hybrid of the two, throwing pink bass worms and swinging them on the end of a fly rod, which didn't work that day according to my memory, but it did for me a few days later out waiting on my own. So
good.
Yeah, I don't like to follow rules, okay, which is why I have you on my fly tying podcast, even though you're mostly known as a conventional tackle guide.
Even though I suck at fly tying, I enjoy it greatly, and I tie a lot of marabou jigs for fin fishing. So same thing. I guess you'd call it a balance leech, but I'm really good with making a bunny leech.
yeah, man. It's all fishing, and you got to learn from the guys who know.
Yeah. I'm glad to be here, and I'm stoked. I love your podcast, so thanks for having me.
Thank you, buddy. Are you ready to be interviewed?
Oh, well, as ready as a guy can be.
do you like being interviewed?
Yeah, it's fine. It's okay. Why not?
I promise I have no tricks up my sleeves. I'm not.
Oh, come on. That's what I was hoping for, actually.
I'm not a trickster. Any YouTube links to old embarrassing bands you allegedly played in were out long ago. And I just want to chat with you about fishing in Alaska. And actually, I do want to get one thing out of the way first. My baseball friends and I have a silly long running joke that everyone in Major League Baseball who goes by JD does so because it's short for jelly dick. Has anyone ever called you that?
Well, maybe after some whiskey, but no, that's actually the first time I've been called worse, but right. And probably that wouldn't be inaccurate here and there over the years, but no, that's first time. So I guess I'll never forget my first time either.
Well, I won't start it. But it works for all the 2-letter first names that start with J. Like JT. JT would be Jelly Tits.
Yeah.
JB might be Jelly Boy or Jelly Baby. It works for all sports. Really, it just has to start with Jelly.
Yeah. Okay. I'm cool.
How are you, dude?
I'm good. I'm sitting here watching it rain on the snow up here in Tahoe, wishing it was snowing instead, but all good.
Yeah. So you're up in South Lake, right? And where have you been fishing? Like it's December right now and we're talking. Where are you fishing these days?
I've been at Pyramid. I fished all the way through Christmas Eve, and I've been there since October. Well, I don't fish the opener, so October 3rd on. And I will continue to be fishing Pyramid until my slip over here at Tahoe opens up. And that's May 1. So I'll be here all winter and spring. And I've been getting a bunch of people. As you know, I moved out of the valley where I was doing river stuff for 25 years or whatever it's been, because those fisheries are failing, and came up to Tahoe and Pyramid to fish on fisheries that actually have fish in them.
Yeah,
And
I meant to mention that in my little intro. Actually, I think I was on your boat on your last Valley salmon season.
yeah, it could have been. It's and that's where I was going with that. I've still got a bunch of people going, hey, are you going to steelhead fish this year? And I keep saying, kind of, what part of I don't do that anymore, don't you get? Yeah. But I did get a new drift boat again this year, and it kind of gave me the fever again. Yeah. So the long-winded answer, I might go do a few steelhead trips in February or March or something like that. But other than that, I'm on Pyramid and Tahoe and Alaska. Those are my three places these days.
Cool. Yeah, Pyramid's kind of new, right? You're doing that last few years?
Yeah, I've been fishing up there for a long time, but getting the guide permit, I didn't do that until we, moved out of Sacramento. It wasn't really feasible. Yeah. So, so that's been, I think this is the third guiding season over there, third or fourth, something like that.
Cool, man. That's a cool spot. I can't wait to go try it out. It's been on my list for a bit, but it's just kind of intimidating as like someone who's never been there to to get up and do that one, especially on my own. Like I definitely want to go out with somebody, with a guide or something the first time.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get up there eventually. I want to do an episode on Pyramid too. There's plenty of conspiracy related topics that I can weave into that one easily.
Yeah. It's all kinds of good stuff, but it's an absolutely incredible world-class fishery. And I'm calling it, you hear about Jurassic Lake down in Argentina. Well, this is the North American Jurassic Lake. And
that's a good comparison, huh?
Yeah, it really is. And in fact, I had Nick Amato, who's the editor of Salmon Trout Steelhead magazine, out on the boat last month or something. And he'd been to the one in Argentina, and he goes, because I that one's always intrigued me as well. And I was like, dude, what do you think after fishing Pyramid a few days? He goes, well, the size of the fish is real similar. The fishing is, as far as action goes, is real similar. He goes, this one's a lot easier to get to though.
Yeah,
so sure. It's one of those places that, bucket list type of deal, go down there and just do it. But he kind of was of the mind that, if you've seen this, you might not need to go down there, but
maybe just move it down the bucket list a little bit.
Yeah. It still seems like a place a guy's got to go see. So it's an amazing fishery, world class. It's pretty interesting to me, as you I'm sure know. I spent the last 6 years as the vice president of the NorCal Guides and Sportsmen's Association, which our primary focus was trying to wrangle the feds, the state, and all the powers that be to actually get more salmon in the rivers. And that's a whole nother sideshow we can talk about, but it's amazing to me being in the politics side of it. You would think we were asking them if we could beat up old ladies or something. I mean, it was, it's like, it's like more salmon in the river. What's the, I'm still not sure what the downside is, but man, they fought and they continue to fight us tooth and nail. And we could do 8 shows on that. But anyway, so my point of that was, you go over to Pyramid and you have a small group of tribal folks who operate a little hatchery, essentially out of it's kind of like a doughboy swimming pool almost.
Yeah.
And they create a world-class fishery. And it's like, okay, state of California's got, the 10th largest economy in the world or whatever, and can't get out of its own way. And you got a handful of natives over there going, yeah, we got this.
Yeah.
And so it's a shining example of what can be done if you got people going in the right direction. And the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe over there does just a fantastic job of maintaining a fishery that's off the charts.
That's cool. Yeah. That little success story reminds me kind of what's going on like the McCallum, the same kind of thing at that hatchery, right?
Yeah. It's had a couple down years recently, but that's more the fact that they haven't had any water.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the same deal. Bill Smith, the hatchery manager over there, kind of runs his own program, and his own success is kind of his downfall, I'm afraid, because that's a state-run hatchery, but through Fish and Wildlife. But East Bay Mud, who owns the dam there at Lake Comanche, which the McCallum flows out of, funds his deal. So he pretty much says, hey, we need this, and they write a check, which is a lot easier than dealing with the state.
Sure.
Even though he's a state employee and all that. But over there on the McCallum, he's got all these creative innovative little techniques.
Yeah.
And, it's working. And, a few years ago, because when he signed up to work over there, I think they were getting like 200 Chinook back a year. And then 10 years later, or whatever it's been, he got 20,000, a few years ago.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, the lights started shining brightly on him, which normally would be good. But then the state goes, hey, you're making us look bad. And it's just, instead of going, holy crap, dude, you're doing this with this tiny little facility. What can we do?
Yeah.
It's just that kind of stuff that drives me nuts. But anyway, we could, like I say, go down the rabbit hole on that too.
You got to stomp out the guy who invents the water-powered car, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how and when did you start your career as a fly fishing guide? If I could kind of go back a little bit.
Oh, well, there was no real magic moment that fly fishing guide happened. I think just general fishing guide is more, because I was doing both. I worked at Western Outdoor News as a senior editor back in 91 and 94. And I had first of all, I had all the latest info available to me because that was pre-internet. And so we were kind of the early version of the internet. So I had all the fishing reports and fished with a lot of guides because in those days, they would say, hey, dude, come fish with me. And, you don't have to pay, just come out and write a story, take some pictures. And they would get bunches of calls. It's like having a viral post, in today's terms, when that was your only information was the newspaper. And so I fished with a lot of guides and kind of started, I don't think I even realized it, but I was going, being on a boat, that's kind of cool. And, and fishing. And of course, like a lot of people, you go, oh, how bad can that be? Just all you do is fish for a living. Well, you learn quickly that that's not at all what you really do. But there's a lot more to it, and it's more of a labor of love than a get rich quick scheme. But 25 years later, I'm still going and still loving it. I had a boat, and so I was kind of, like I say, in the I don't know, I had all the inside info, and I had days off during the week, and so I just started going fishing a lot more than I used to, and armed with better information. I was taking buddies. And so, when you have a boat, you're the guide.
Yeah.
And it just kept going. And after a while, it was like buddies of buddies were coming. And at the end of the day, I'm sitting there, like, putting gas in the boat and scrubbing the deck. And they're like, hey, yeah, see you, thanks. Like, well, wait a minute. And then another thing happened. We were fishing the American a lot, especially for salmon. And a few of the original guides there, we always noticed that they were grumpy. There's one guy we called, I didn't know either of their names, but one guy was like jackass and one was asshole or something. I can't even remember.
Just very, very straight to the point.
Yeah. And it was just, we didn't know the guys. That's what we picked up from fishing around them. And don't touch that rod, blah, 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 and I kept thinking, well, geez, we're catching as many fish as those guys. And I could be nice to people. That's not a real tough one.
Yeah, easy.
And so that's kind of where things just started. Sort of that was the seed, and this is over some time. Of course, I bought a drift boat finally, and said, well, because I didn't have a Coast Guard license in those days, so you got to start with a unpowered vessel, and bought a 16-foot clacker-craft and started guiding. And let me just tell you, thank God that there were tons of fish back in those days, especially salmon, because I sucked. I really did. And prime example. So my first day of guiding was August 28th, 1998. And I had one client, a guy named John Emmond, who's never fished with me since, the bastard. But I saw him at the sports show. I see him at the sports shows every year and we have a good laugh. But I told him this story a few years ago, but we get in the boat and we're rowing downriver. We launched at River Reflections campground on the low flow of the Feather. I'm rowing down to this first hole and it's dark. I remember going like, okay, the shit's getting real now. I need a sign. And I look up and I see a shooting star. I was like, so to this day, I'm like, if I see a shooting star, I know fishing's going to be good.
Yeah.
Wow. But so anyway, on the way down in the dark, John goes, well, how long you been doing this? And at that point, it'd been about 6 minutes. And so being the journalism major, I figured, well, we're going to use semantics against him here. Well, he didn't specifically say guiding, right?
Yeah.
So I just assumed he was referring to fishing. So I said, oh, God, I've been doing this for years. Again, I told him that story, a few years ago, and we got a good laugh out of it. But I was like, I'm sorry, dude. What am I supposed to say? You're the first one. But so we go down and we get to the first hole, anchor up. What I remember about that day is we caught his limit of salmon. We caught a limit of salmon for me. And in the first hole, I rode back to the boat ramp without doing the drift because we hadn't gone very far. And it was, like 9 o'clock in the morning. And I thought I was king shit, and I get home and my buddy, who was one of my, longtime friends going back to junior high, swung by and he's like, you've been real supportive of this, I'm going to go guiding move. And so he swung by to see how it, went, because this is, pre-cell phone days. And I was like, oh, yeah, we messed him up, man. This is, I think I was a little too cocky. And the river god said, all right, punk. Yeah. Okay. You had your little moment in the sun, but I don't think I caught a limit of salmon the rest of that summer. And it was one of those things where I realized, and I'm sure a lot of guides do this, is you realize you don't know jack. And I thought I was a badass, but then when I started thinking about it, it's like, oh, well, I didn't have to do it every day because I had another job. We only cherry picked the best times. Like, we didn't go on busy weekends. We went, during the middle of the week, and we didn't go if the water was too high or too low, too cold, too hot, north wind, whatever. Kind of went peak of the season, and we always did real well. Well, no shit, Sherlock. If you pick all the best times, you're probably going to do pretty well. And then it was a real slap in the face when I had to do it on a daily basis, regardless of the conditions. And you got people staring at you thinking you're some guru. And it was a big learning curve. And really, to this day, I had a lady on the boat, I don't know, last year or so. And she said, how long you been doing this? I said, since August of 1998. Oh, wow. You must know everything there is to know. And I was like, yeah, that's the funny thing, is the deeper I get into this stuff, the more I realize I don't know,
Well,
and that's part of the fun.
Yeah. We're probably similar that way. I mean, a lot of anglers probably are, right? Like, we're attracted to things that are humbling, that in that sense, right? Where you kind of can't stop learning. Like, you could definitely think you know it all and be totally fooled by everything, or nothing works the next day, right?
Right. And it's funny, a lot of my guide buddies are always like looking in the boat, and when we used to be camping up on the Trinity for a month, they'd always like to come by and just see what kind of kooky stuff I had on rods. I remember one guy going, man, you're always experiment. I'm like, how can you not?
Yeah.
It's the day that you think you know everything is probably the day you gotta quit. And for me, the fun of it is trying to build a better mousetrap. I'm always looking to improve the game. So
Totally.
that's what keeps you going, really.
That's really one of the main things that got me into tying flies, got into fly fishing, and you're fishing with all this stuff. But look, when you can make everything your own way, like customize everything your own way, and like depending on certain variables and all that stuff, like I don't know, the puzzle got bigger, right? And like, there's more pieces, and it just got more fun.
Well, I always think of fishing as one of those bloomin' onions at Outback.
Yeah.
It's easy to get a bloomin' onion. Get to Outback Steakhouse. No rules, just right.
How's about a nice juicy steak to go with that bloomin' onion?
Steak! Hey, why didn't I think of that? I love steak. Big, juicy.
Like, you keep peeling layers away, and you think you're there, and you're like, oh God, there's another layer down there, and you keep going and going and going. And when you first start, the questions are pretty basic. Where do fish live? Okay, in the water.
Sure.
As you get further along, you go, okay, so that fish bit this on such and such a weather day with barometric pressure and the temperature and blah blah blah. Why did he bite that, or why didn't he bite that? And down the rabbit hole you go. But that's what's fun.
One more bloomin' onion, please.
Yeah, another 4,000 calories.
Besides for the guiding, you're a man who's worn many hats. What are some of the coolest side gigs that you've gotten to do over the years?
Oh, wow. Okay. This is going way back, but Sacramento used to have a radio station called 93 Rock.
Oh yeah, I'm very familiar. Yeah.
Crank it up. And they had that little white line that people said, that was a little slash under the 93 Rock, crank it up. And people were like, yeah, crank it up. All right. But I remember we heard that all the time. That was this is going back 100 years, but
set themselves up with that tagline.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. And it looked like white powder. It really did.
Yeah.
But it was so cool because it started off as two of us and they just liked us so much that we ended up hiring two more of our friends to do this job, but they had a 93 Rock van and we got to drive that around.
Yes, you guys were in the van. You guys were in the radio van.
We were the van dudes.
Oh yeah.
And so we didn't have to be our job was like from, like 10 to 3 or something. I mean, it was cushion. We got paid pretty good for, the era, and they paid for we were driving down from Auburn at the time. That's where we lived. And they paid for our gas mileage. They paid for our lunches and then paid us hourly. And so it was a pretty cool gig. And all we would do was go down there in the morning, sit in the broadcast booth with the DJ, and they'd be like, "Hey, we got the 93 Rock fan dudes here. Yeah. Hey, where you guys going today?" And we'd be like, well, it's a nice day. Maybe we'll go to Folsom Lake and see if we can talk to some girls, And so, all right, go down to Folsom Lake. They'll be down there from 10 to 2, And so that was a fun one. We just screwed off. And then a lot of the memory is fading, but some of the coolest jobs I've had that were kind of came after the fishing career started. For several years, I got hired. A lot of years, actually. I got hired by various agencies, including Cal Fish and Game and some of these other private NGOs around. I was kind of their go-to guy when they had a study that they needed to conduct that involved tagging fish that they couldn't, due to conditions or whatever, they couldn't catch them with, nets or electrofishing or whatever. And the only way they could really figure out how to do it was hook and line. And so I was their guy.
Oh yeah.
So I did
about
5 or 6 years, I can't remember, on the feather and the Yuba for spring Chinook, which was so cool because, that fishery was closed to regular people. So never had anybody fishing in your hole. And, and so I got to do that. And really some cool stuff came out of that as far as catch and release mortality stuff.
It was like 8-hour days of just catching salmon.
Yeah. While we're trying, we'd go up and fish at the base of Daguerre Dam on the Yuba and fish at Shanghai Falls on the feather. And it was pretty cool. And then I did one on the Stanislaus years ago where we had to catch trout for some sort of migration study. And so we had private access there. And then I did almost a year-long one at what we call the Poopy Pipe, which is the Sacramento wastewater treatment. Okay. I don't know, there's on the Sacramento River downstream of Sacramento.
Yeah.
If this is probably the stuff that people don't want to hear, but you think about it, where does all the wastewater go? Oh yeah, back in the river.
Gotta go somewhere.
Yeah. So just below, if anybody listening is familiar with the Freeport Bridge on the Sacramento River, about, a few hundred yards below that, parallel to the bridge, so perpendicular to the river, is a 10-foot diameter pipe with 99 1-foot ports, poop holes.
Yeah.
and it's treated, of course, and and it smells like chlorine to something terrible down there. But anyway, that pipe, because it's 10 feet in diameter, creates like an artificial sort of current block down there on the bottom. And they were the wastewater treatment plant was doing some sort of relicensing or something. I can't remember now, but somebody said, hey, there's always fishermen lined up right on our pipe. Maybe we're creating an artificial predator hotspot. They're looking at Delta smelt and juvenile Chinook salmon get eaten there.
Sure.
So it's like 20 something feet deep there, and they couldn't figure out how to get anything for tagging and stomach pumping there. So
maybe a bunch of lamprey too, maybe all that stuff.
Yeah, we never caught those, but we caught pretty much everything else. So they wanted us specifically to target predators, striped bass being the primary ones, but largemouth bass and pike minnow and that kind of stuff. So we did that for, that was for long days, like 12-hour days, sitting kind of in the same spot all day. It got monotonous, but when the weather was nice, it was fun. We're just sitting there on anchor with, sardines or live minnows out, whatever, trying to imitate baby salmon essentially. And that's where I caught my biggest fish ever. It was in November. The water had gotten cold, and the job was fun when the water was warm because, we caught some big stripers, but for the most part in the late summer and fall, there's a billion little kind of shaker to 4 or 5 pound stripers there. And so you put a piece of sardine on, throw it out there and catch a fish every cast. And then of course we're getting data. So it looks like, that makes our bosses happy. Well, come November, the water got cold and everything just disappeared. And we're sitting there in just horrible, cold, foggy conditions, how cold it gets in Sacramento when the fog's out. Yep. And we were catching like 1 12-inch striper a day. And so because it was our job to catch whatever was there, we said, okay, let's target 12-inch stripers. And so we scaled our gear way down. So I had essentially a trout rod that was like 6 to 12 pound test, little 6.5 foot rod, 12 pound line, and a tiny little hook with a piece of sardine like the size of your thumbnail. Because again, the only fish were there were tiny. So we were trying to make sure we caught the ones that were there. Well, I ended up hooking and landing after an hour about a 260 pound sturgeon on that gear.
No way.
Yeah.
To the boat?
Oh yeah, we got it in the boat. The biologist measured it, and it was 8 feet long. It was pretty epic, and it was funny because the biologists at that point were like, because they like to fish, and I'm like, I don't know why these guys are getting paid to do this. And then after that, he goes, "Dude, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen." And now I know you're a true pro.
that weird prehistoric mouth wanted that tiny little piece of sardine.
Well, I figure there's.
Or accidentally, just sucked it up, huh? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think they're just constantly, vacuuming, and if you're vacuuming anyway, why not take a little tiny piece of bait? You'd probably like a bigger one, but it was there.
Tasty morsel you gave him.
Yeah. So anyway, that's
crazy. Does that qualify for any sort of light tackle record or something like that?
I don't even know. It was pretty.
I wonder.
It was pretty awesome just seeing that thing come up and on that little rod. I'll have to show you some pictures. They were taking pictures of me. That little rod's just maxed out. I'm surprised I landed it actually, but
I'm gonna make a note to remind you.
Yeah, it was fun. And we got paid for it by the hour. So,
so you mentioned Alaska, and that's kind of why I got you on the show. I was really kind of to dig into that a little bit. You've been guiding up in Togiak, right? And how long have you been guiding up there?
I've been guiding on the Togiak River since 2014. Prior to that, I was on the Togiak, which is used to be world's greatest king salmon fishery, which has fallen on hard times like most king salmon fisheries. But I was on that river for 6 or 7 years prior to that. Okay. And there's a little break in there somewhere when we had our kid. I stopped going for a little bit, but I did, I guess I'm pushing 20 years of Alaska. Plus I've been several times. I've been a columnist for Fish Alaska magazine forever. And so they used to send me to Alaska on trips, and write a story about this or that. Yeah. So
I guess that doesn't really qualify as a side gig. That was like a gig you had. That is sweet. That's cool.
Yeah. So that was a good time. I just don't have time they'd send me now, but I'm already going 2 times a year.
Yeah.
It's all ready to go work.
Are those 2 rivers in the same general area?
Yeah, they're so Bristol Bay area, which I'm sure you've heard of. If you picture a map of Alaska, you got the big mass, and then down on the southwest corner where the Aleutian chain starts to veer off from the landmass, that's the general area down there, kind of in the extreme southwestern corner of the continental state, I guess you'd say. It's out in the middle of nowhere. Both of them are. You have to fly or boat to get there, and
I want you to explain that a little bit. You've posted some videos, and I'll link to those in the show notes. There's been a couple you've posted, kind of like a time lapse, I believe, of you traveling.
Okay, yeah.
And I want to say one of you kind of stranded at one point too.
Yeah.
But I want you to tell me. I mean, we're both here in Northern California, so it might be a little specific. But what's your travel like getting up there to start your guide season?
Yeah, so hop on I go out of Reno. I used to go to Sacramento. You go to Anchorage regardless, and then by the time you get to Anchorage, the flights out to Togiak have already left. So you always have to stay the night. The lodge, I'm fortunate the lodge now pays for our hotel. I used to sleep on the couches in the airport, which sucked.
Oh man, you're like DIY punk man style.
Yeah, exactly. And the guy with the little floor cleaning Zamboni right by your ear at 3 a.m., So yeah, I stay in a hotel and hop on the lodge charters a plane. So it's just you and other guests flying out. And it's about an hour and a half, hour 45 from Anchorage on a, like a 12, 15 seat, whatever it is, plane. And then
kind of a scary one, like a double prop deal.
Yeah. Little, I mean, not like a commuter airliner. It's much smaller and they kind of duct taped together, really. I mean, they look kind of janky and usually, the pilots look like they're about 11.
You're comfortable. Your dad's a pilot, right?
Yeah, I've been around airplanes my whole life, so that doesn't bother me.
Well,
but
my wife's a pilot, and I that scares me already. The two props, she'd love it, but that'd be a couple Xanax before the flight, kind of.
Well, I figured two props are better than one, So
good point. I like you're thinking there.
But man, if you had a problem, I don't know where you'd go.
Yeah, right.
I think about that too, flying, like when you start on your descent and you're just going over endless, either epic mountains, which you probably wouldn't have to worry about surviving that because you're not going to make it. But, you can probably put it down, once you get over towards where we are, if you're not in a mountain, it's all pretty flat tundra and pretty soft, it's wet.
Yeah.
So you could probably survive a, sort of a controlled crash landing out there. But and people, I've had these conversations with people on the plane. Oh man, the bears will get us.
So you don't have that conversation on the plane?
Oh yeah, well, people, a lot of times I'm dealing with first time people up there, and they're like, "What if we weren't down here?" I'm like, "Don't worry about the grizzly bears. The mosquitoes would get you before that." So, but anyway, you fly an hour and a half or whatever out there, and you land in the village of Togiak, which is, several hundred people in a dirt strip. And you land out there, and you referenced the time that I got left. You work in Alaska enough times, you're going to get forgotten a few times. And I did on the Nushagak, and that was back.
They forget you. They don't have like a reminder or something like like JD is going to be there.
Oh yeah, they do. But they, what happens is there's always so much going on that, to operate a lodge out in the middle of the tundra, there's always a fire to put out, and you kind of lose track of the days too because the sun never goes down. And so they forgot about me I guess last summer. So I walked into town. Luckily I knew some people and got to hang out because it was raining. But
I was going to ask you how long the walk was.
Oh, it's a mile or so. It's not too bad. And then I know some people in town from being up there so long that so it was starting to rain. I was pretty stoked to be able to, get in there and find somebody to harbor me and call the lot.
Yeah, it sounds terrifying, but I mean, the way you explained it, I guess it doesn't seem so bad. But it's Alaska still, like you just said, the bugs. I don't like bugs. I don't like bugs.
I don't like bugs either. That's the thing that, people are always like grizzly bears. I'm like, yeah. I mean, of course, a grizzly bear could ruin your whole life, but bugs are something you deal with daily. We had it
relentlessly, probably, right?
Oh, sometimes, yeah. Especially during the king season, which is I go there, mid June to mid July time frame, and that's when the snow's just melted off, and there's standing water everywhere, and the lodge is out in the tundra, so you can't, without boots or waders, you can't walk on quote unquote dry land. So the buildings are all on stilts, and there's, a boardwalk that connects all the the buildings.
Okay.
And so if you've just stepped off it, you get your feet wet. You're living in a rice paddy essentially,
Oh, wow.
Wow. And so years where the bugs are fierce. There was one, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, where they get the guides in sort of dormitory style, a couple guys to a room thing, and Bob Spar, who's a Sacramento guide, he and I were roomed together one year. The bugs, like you do this sort of bug roundup before you go to bed.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you can hear everybody swat, swat, swat hitting the walls.
Yeah.
And then we're like, okay, we got them. We must have killed 80 of them or something, 100 bugs.
Yeah.
And then you lay down and all of a sudden it's like, they're just all over you. And you look up and the ceiling's covered and you're like,
oh yeah,
what the F, man? Where'd those all come from?
Missed the
And
ceiling.
go kill those, lay down again. And it was just like, we started going crazy. And so, it was the middle of the night. I went and got some duct tape and we're living 2 feet above a swamp. So there's bugs hatching below us, but we're trying to figure out how they're getting in. And so we duct taped
You just start sealing up anything you could. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it still didn't work.
Oh, man.
I mean, we had every available, at least we thought. I mean, it was a mystery. Like, how are these getting in here? Because we duct taped every joint in that building. Oh God. And so you have to sleep with the covers over your head and earphones in. Otherwise you can't sleep.
The walls were made of mosquito eggs.
That's kind of what it seemed like. It's just the guide cabins are not built super well. It's like plywood and.
Well, I want to know what that's a question I had here. I want to know what a normal day's work is for a seasonal guide up there. So what does it start like? Like what's the, start to finish?
So you go in and have breakfast at 7 and they cook you, a lot. We have a Michelin star chef up there.
Oh,
so
yeah.
The grub is really almost too much. Like you should lose weight hustling as much as you do up there. Come back with a few extra LBs, but So you have some breakfast and then the guests get served breakfast after you. So 8:00 is when, it's kind of the green light that boats can go out. So after you eat breakfast, you're zipping around, putting fuel in your boat or, doing whatever.
You guys are prepping while the guests are eating and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they come down and hop in the boat and off you go. And you're back at noon for lunch, which, they've tried to do shore lunches and we still do them every once in a while. But I tell you what,
we're going to go back to the bugs again. We could talk about the bugs again.
Yeah, that's always my thing. Like, why do we want to sit outside? It's so nice if it's buggy, if it's rainy, if it's really hot. I mean, there's a lot of conditions where it's just nice to get out of that for an hour.
Yeah.
So but we come back in and usually that's the morning sessions when, if you're going to keep some salmon, that's when you do it. So we can fillet them and we fillet them before lunch. And, and we used to have the old way at the lodge was there's this big 3 or 4 cleaning tables right in the front lawn of the lodge. Mm-hmm. And it was so disgusting, the amount of carnage that happens there. There'd be like, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches of goo.
Yeah.
And it's fish blood, it's fish eggs, it's fish fins, and it
goo. Yeah.
Oh, it was like fish jello, parts jello, and it just or snot maybe.
You got to can that and sell it for like $65 a jar as artisanal goo straight from Togiak.
Yeah, I mean it was just so, let's say, non-sanitary. And then people walk in there and then they go walk in the kitchen or something.
Yeah.
So when the new owners bought it, I said, hey, we gotta shit can that whole fish cleaning system. Where I was on the Togiak, our fish cleaning tables were just set out in like a foot of water. And then, so the river just washed all the stuff away and you'd have 8 million little baby salmon and stuff there to clean up but we have kind of a high bank, so there's no beach. They decided to put wash down pumps in the boats and you just have a fish cleaning table in your boat. So we go clean them somewhere else. And that solves a couple problems. You don't have the fish soup quagmire around the lodge. But,
do you think that all you Alaskan guides out there are the reason that people started tying flesh flies? Because I mean, like, I'm half joking. I mean, obviously they're eating flesh anyway, but like, that seems like a thing that like was probably pretty routine for all the lodges, you know. Wherever they were at, and so they're gobbling up these pieces of white fluffy stuff and pinkish white stuff that people end up tying up as flies when they get up there, right?
Yep. Well, and when we used to have the fish cleaning table right in front of the lodge, we would have the world's largest aquarium of giant trout and dollies. And they would, guys would go down there with either a little bead under an indicator or just a little piece of yarn. And you didn't have to have your flesh fly white because we were throwing, fresh orange fillet, so they were more targeted on that. It was kind of cool because you would see not only, feeding all these giant trout. I mean, the biggest every year, somebody catch a 12-pounder out of there, but the amount of smolts and fry. So you're like, okay, well, at least we're, kind of giving these guys a little leg up, giving back a little bit. They're fattening up for their journey downstream quicker than they would otherwise. And this year the lodge bought a big meat grinder and started just taking the carcasses and running them through there. And then just, the carcasses would go into the water like, sausage meat.
Oh, wow. And I was wondering, would they be selling it in bulk for like dog food or something like that?
Yeah, no, we're checking them in. The natives always want the heads. The people in the village want the heads. And what they do with those is make, they put them in a 5-gallon bucket with rock salt and put them on their front porch for 2 weeks and then eat it like that.
Okay.
Which don't knock it till you try it, but
man, I'm okay. I'm okay with the funky stuff. I'm down.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm down with that, but I haven't tried it. So but anyway, we clean the fish and come in for lunch, and while we're eating with the guests, the fish fillets go into the processing hut where there's another crew that cleans them up with paper towels, wraps them in tightly in saran wrap, and then vacuum seals them.
Are those usually locals too, or those folks that are seasonal workers that come up?
Those are employees, local, or not locals, but seasonal employees. And then after lunch, you go back out till 5 o'clock, clean your boat up, and you're done for the day. And it's a long grind because it's kind of like doing two trips a day, sort of. But
you guys end up eating dinner with the guests and stuff, or is that separate?
Yeah, there's one big dining hall. We have the guests sit down with fancy linen and stuff. We're kind of cafeteria style, and they keep us not separated, but we're on a different side of the hall, which is.
They don't want you guys getting too big for your britches over there. Right?
Well, that's it. And we appreciate it because, when you're sitting with somebody, these guests are there for 5 days. So
I get
with people for 5 days. It's nice to have a little, it's always funny because, the guys will be eating. And I'm like, hey, here comes your client, dude. Yeah. Like, come on, we need boundaries.
There turns out to be a science camp quality to that. A social element that may not exist on your regular day-to-day guide trips, huh?
Yeah, it's kind of like going back to college, lived in the dorms with the boys, and they've got a really good crew up there.
Yeah, you get all kinds of people coming through, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's a different clientele in general up there. Those people are paying $6,000 a week or whatever.
Yeah,
than your daily people because. Generally, they're a little more affluent, and sometimes those uber affluent people are a little more difficult to deal with.
You don't say.
Yeah. For the most part, up there now, I just take my people. Like, there's people that won't go if I don't go.
Oh yeah.
And then I take a lot of my customers from down here. So now it's pretty much to where I don't fish a whole lot of people I don't know.
That's cool.
Which is nice.
That's a big trip to not know for certain that you jive with the person you're spending all that time with too. So
I mean, from a customer standpoint, you could get some jack weasel guide and be miserable.
Yeah, man.
So
so on the flip side, what's it like how much different is it for an angler? I mean, like, I know you guys have separate lodging and you're kind of on different meal schedules and stuff like that, but is it kind of like, do they get to pick what they're going, what they're fishing for, all those kind of different things?
Well, it's so what I do, and I can only really speak to what I'm about. But it depends on the season. I go for kings and I go for silvers in the fall. And usually, like I was saying, we target the primary species that they are there for in the morning, and get a half day in a kingfishing, or you catch 100 silvers in a half day. It's like, okay, hopefully these guys want to do something else now after lunch. I pretty much just sort of not really dictate it, but I kind of do. I just said, okay, well, I strongly suggest what we're going to do next, and I'm kind of the master of just the full experience there. Some guys, and they haven't been there as long as I have, so they don't know all the little backwaters and sneaky spots. So some guys just, take them to do the same thing over and over again. I like the variety. It's probably more for my own sanity than anything, but everybody seems to love it. Like, okay, we got your limit of silvers this morning, so we can go catch some silvers, but you want to go try to, we'll take a little jet boat up a little creek and we'll fish egg patterns behind spawning salmon for big dollies. Oh yeah, that sounds cool. I've never fly fished before. Don't worry about it. Just get in the water. And
or I've seen you do all weird stuff, like throwing pink topwater plugs and stuff for salmon,
that's
which I don't think I've seen many other people doing that, at least not posting it online or anything.
It's so fun, and you can do it with pink deer hair.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I would tie up a big old pink gurgler or something pattern that is just pulling water off the top and stuff, and it'd be crazy.
It's so fun. It's especially when the silver fishing is out of control. I've had people. I'm not a fish counter kind of guy. I just I just kind of gauge it on. Yeah, we had a good day. The weather was nice. Sure. The conversation was good. We caught a bunch of fish. Mm-hmm. Who cares how many we caught, But I've often had people ask me, hey, how many silvers do you catch a day up there? I don't know, 20, 40, I don't know, 50 maybe. Mm-hmm. Well, so I had some guys count. They didn't tell me they were counting.
Oh, yeah.
But they counted. And this was a good day. I mean, it wasn't abnormal, but it was, it was peak fishing. At the end of the day, they said, hey, you want to know how many we caught? I'm like, oh, yeah. I'm thinking 60 or something. They said, we had 119 by lunch. I'm like, oh, wow. Shit. And then, similar amounts. So you can, when that place is going, you can do, guys can do 200 coho in a day.
You gotta feel like you pitched a doubleheader after.
Well, that's what the takeaway for me was, like, no shit, no wonder I'm so sore. Right? From bending over, unhooking all these fish, and that's another reason why it's nice to. Okay, we caught a bunch of coho in the morning. Let's go see if we can catch a pike or go. Yeah. But usually by day 3 or 4 on one afternoon, guys just want to go for a sightseeing trip, and we'll pull in a couple spots and throw some.
It sounds like such an unbelievable experience, and I'm sure that's why it's on everybody's list. But to have that much variety and that, and for it to be that plentiful still, I know it's in danger of not being, but sounds so cool.
It really does. Like I say, I moved away from the Sacramento Valley because the salmon fisheries that really were my lifeblood. And, that's always what I've loved, salmon fishing and steelhead. Mm-hmm. And in fact, my first business was called Sacramento Salmon Company, just to, and Wi-Fi at our house down in Sacramento was the house that salmon built. So, that's how entrenched with salmon I've been.
You should have held on to the Sacramento Salmon Company. That's so old school sounding and cool. Just straight to the point. That's a good one, man.
Except there's no salmon left, but the Sacramento Salmonless Company. But
you see it. I look at it now. I'm picturing an old weathered sign. That's falling apart.
Totally. What going to Alaska does is seeing that the Togiak River. We're down in the lower 7 miles of the river, so it's very much a delta. Lots of side channels and sloughs, much like the delta that I used to fish, the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta is used to be, I guess, and which is now all, as riprap banks and sewage effluent and all kinds of crap, unfortunately. Right. Yeah. But you go and see a healthy estuary and delta and go, oh wow. And every little back slough is full of wood, and around all that wood are clouds of baby salmon everywhere. Yeah. And the amount of clean spawning cobble for as far as you can see. And then sunny days when you run up the river, on a low water year, you look and each side, each margin of the river is like a nonstop stream of sockeyes or chums or coho or pink or, whatever time of year it is. Just the edges. There's just like, you go 10 miles and it's just been fish on both sides of you the whole way, and so it's good for my soul to go see that, okay, there's still ecosystems that are functioning and, habitats intact.
Naturally thriving.
No hatchery needed,
That's super cool.
Yeah, really cool.
To wrap up an angler's day there, are they in like a lodge scenario too, where it's like they're bunked up, they have separate rooms? Is it up to what they pay for, different packages or something like that?
Yeah, there's different size rooms, but the rooms vary in size from two to a room, like little cabins. They're all cabins. I think the biggest cabin holds like 6 people. So they don't mix people, obviously. It's, if you have a big group or family, they put you in one of the bigger ones. And so, they come in
like
and
all inclusive stuff kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. It's once you're there, you're not paying for anything. You come in at 5 and the guests go in and usually take a shower and stuff. And then by 6, they have appetizers, which usually is fresh smoked salmon and sort of charcuterie trays type deal. Yeah. And then they serve up, like I say, we got the Michelin chef there. So he actually has to throttle back a little bit, because it's not a mint on the pillow type place. It's a nice, comfortable place, but you're not, we're not, smoking cigars and, that kind of stuff. He's had to like down home it a little bit, which I think is, almost feels like he's a little beneath him. He's got so much more skill than that, but people just kind of want out.
Yeah, that's what you want when you're like a long day outside doing that. Like, I don't think I'm looking for like a $30 Caesar salad. I know it's all inclusive, and I like a Caesar salad too, but like I'm kind of looking for like a burger or some simple plate of pasta or something after that. Something
you don't want like the little Wagyu beef medallion that's the size of a quarter with a mint leaf on it or something.
And then wait 10 minutes for the next bite to come out, or whatever, right?
No, it's hard to eat good food. This guy's he's a badass in the kitchen though, so it's really cool. And then so they're there for 5.
Sounds like a cool gig for a seasonal chef to go up there. That sounds pretty cool.
Oh yeah, and it's hard to find good ones because usually the good ones are hired and they can't get away for 3 months or don't want to, or you get some short order fry cook who's out of work because he got kicked out because he couldn't pass a P test or something, So we got lucky with this guy. He's great. He's really cool too. And it's cool to watch a real chef. He walks around. Like I stopped telling him, he's a good buddy of mine. I stopped telling him, dude, that was so good. Cause he looks at you like, no shit.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, what do you think I am? I'm, an amateur. It's like, I don't, it's kind of like, hey, good job fishing today. I'm like, oh yeah, duh. So now I just kind of give him a little nod, like, yo, that was cool.
I never really thought about that. I like talking to chefs too. Like when I go out and it's like, I don't think they really, unless they ask you, you probably shouldn't say it. They know that what they did is good. Like, you should just shoot it with them, right? Just shoot the shit with them. Yeah.
I'd never thought about that until he started giving me like the look like, shut up, bitch.
They just want to see. They just want to see that you enjoy it. They know because you ate it or you're eating it, right? Yeah.
Totally. They see the plates come back in full or empty. So anyway, and so the guests are there for 5 days, and then they go home, and we get another group, and the whole cycle starts again.
You cycle it out, and so how long are you there every season? What is it?
Oh, it changes. I used to go for 2 months, and now I'm down. Well, last few years I've been going half the king season, which is 2 weeks, and then I'll go back in September for half the coho season. This year I am Xing out the king season because that's late June, early July, which is just absolute peak time here at Tahoe. 4th of July weekend, and why not sleep in your own bed and be 4 minutes from your boat in the marina at home. So I'll do once September 1 rolls around, and that's when I go the first 2 weeks of September, which is the last 2 weeks of their whole season up there. But that's when, people are going back to school and things slow down a little bit here. So that still kind of makes some sense. I started going to Alaska when fisheries in Sacramento area started dying down. We didn't have anything going on in summer. So I needed something, but I don't need anything in the summer anymore. So
something you don't really realize until you start going out fishing with guys is that juggle, that kind of shuffle that you guys figure out, to keep things, keep things going. Yeah. I wanted to talk to you a little bit too about booking a trip, like tips on booking, figuring out to get up there. It's a big thing. Like it's not just like hey, I'm going to go up and fish the Snake River or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's not something like that. Like there's a lot of variables, and I know that you've been around this stuff for so long. I wonder if you could give us some tips.
Yeah. So I get a lot of people on my boats down here in the lower 48. Oh yeah, I've always wanted to go to Alaska. We're going to go next year. I'm like, where are you going? Oh, I don't know. I'm like, you Google it, Google Alaska fishing and you'll get, 7,900,000,000 results.
Yeah.
And it's a real sort of mind blow when you try to go, okay. So what I always tell people, it's like, okay, figure out what you're into. Like, do you want to go throw dry flies for something, or do you want to, go catch a bunch of sockeye, or are you a halibut ocean? Kind of got to, the easiest thing first is to narrow it down. Do you want salt or fresh? Mm-hmm. And then you can, from there, start paring it down. Okay, well, and you don't have to pick either or. There's plenty of places that have both, but it just helps to kind of, instead of going, I'm just going to Alaska because where the fish just jump in the boat, and it's like, well, it's still fishing, and you want to kind of not be so sort of haphazard about it. You want to kind of hit it the best time, and so
maximize your buck. I mean, it's not a cheap trip. Yeah.
No, not at all. So you're just trying to sort of narrow it down. So that's what I try to help people with, that say they're going, okay, so you're, do you spin fish? Do you fly fish? Do you like salt? Do you like fresh? A little both. Okay. And then you can start kind of going, okay, well, this particular area looks like it has salt and fresh options, or, that kind of stuff. And, do you want salmon? Do you want trout? Because a lot of times they cross over, but it's just good to kind of get a feel, kind of be honest with yourself what you want. Do you want to bring a bunch of fish home? Do you want to just catch and release? And you want to be near town? Do you want to rough it? Do you want to camp? Do you want to do a float trip? I mean, there's so many different ways you can go. My favorite thing to do when I was, I told you I was getting sent to Alaska a lot by Fish Alaska magazine on, story trips where they'd essentially cover all the costs. Mm-hmm. They tried to send me to a couple, and they did once to like a hoity-toity lodge, and that's just not my jam. So I became their do-it-yourself sort of guy on the spot. So they'd say, hey, we're going to do a episode on all things fishing Juneau in, the whatever May issue. And so they would say, hey, we got you a car, we got you a place to stay. Just go to.
This sounds like a dream, dude. Like
it was awesome. I always brought a buddy too. So,
so how do you make that phone call? You're like, who gets to go this time?
I know that was actually difficult. But yeah, so we'd go and like, okay, we're going to Juneau, whatever. And we'd kind of, they would just say, figure it out. Well, that was the editor. The editor in those days was pretty chill. And one time, and I didn't talk to the publisher very often, but one time we were in Togiak, and I've been there like 3 or 4 days of our trip, and somehow he called me for something, and then it's like, well, so what's your story on? I said, oh, we're doing kind of the road system, Silvers by car kind of thing. And he goes, God damn it, we've done that 1,000 times, blah, blah, blah. Get a new idea. I was like, oh crap, we've burned up half our trip. And we were staying at this bed and breakfast, which was awesome. This lady was like so cool. Anyway, so she was making breakfast, and she's on this bay, and she goes, breakfast is gonna be a little late. Why don't you guys go down and fish off the beach? And we're like, we can fish off the beach for what? She's like, oh, you'll catch silvers, and there's dollies, and there's some, maybe some little flounders or something. We're like, oh, cool.
So we went down, kind of like flats kind of stuff, or what?
No, it was just in the surf.
Oh, just surf.
It wasn't. It looked like a Northern California beach. Really, it was, rocky, and cool. So we started catching. I think we started catching humpies and stuff, and then if you we were just using spoons, you throw it way out as far as you could and let it sink to the bottom. We were catching halibut and rockfish. Nothing big. We were using trout rods essentially, but it was a kick in the ass. We're like, this is so cool. So that rewrote the whole story. We're like, let's just go fish every beach on this island.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And so we did a surf.
And stay at this nice bed and breakfast. Someone's making us delicious meals.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. So we surf fished That was the article, Surf Fishing Kodiak. And, and that one, the publisher was just over the moon because nobody's done that,
Is that article still available?
I'd have to look. It might be online somewhere.
I'm going to look for a link. I'd like to share that.
Yeah, it was fun. It was super cool. We caught, all kinds of stuff in the salt, lots of salmon, and we caught chums, pinks, cohos. I don't think we caught any kings. It was too late, but and various other critters. I caught a true Pacific cod, all kinds of stuff. So it was fun.
But so your basic general tips though are to figure out exactly what you want to do, because the options are vast, and then you want to kind of dial in where you want to go based on that. Obviously you're working within certain budgets. Different people have different amounts to spend and all that kind of stuff, but it's really figuring that out. And then what about finding, I mean, obviously we'd love people to fish with you in your lodge, but like finding a guide, finding the right one.
That's difficult at times. And one of the things you can do is, depending on where you are, in the wintertime, these big sportsman shows come to a lot of big cities, and, Portland, Sacramento, Chicago. I mean, they're all over the place. And at those are great because there's always have Alaskan lodges at them. Mm-hmm. And what's nice about that is you can go to the sports shows and actually get some FaceTime with the people.
They're there
because the websites, I mean, you could still, get a bum deal there, but at least you kind of looking somebody in the eye, you get a little better feel. But
for sure,
somebody can have a outstanding website and you get there and you're like, they did some creative photography. Because I've heard those horror stories 100 times, it looked so cool. We got there and the guy was drunk and, the place was a shambles. And so
how disappointing would that be after?
Oh, totally. I mean, I've one of my guide buddies went up there and they didn't have any food at the lodge. It was a remote lodge. Wow. And so they were eating salmon for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And
so you got to catch your food. We didn't tell you.
Yeah, it was just, the guy was crazy. Just kind of checking out, I guess. Yeah. But
so there's a tip. Make sure get a reputable review, maybe from somebody that you know or trust at least, right?
Yeah, or ask for references or something. Yeah. And I mean, it's hard. There's so many choices, and you kind of have to wing it. But the other thing you can do is talk to people who've gone.
Yeah,
if you have any buddies or family members or anybody who's gone to Alaska, it's nice to go, hey, how was your experience? And then the other thing to remember if you're going, and we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but remember it's still fishing. Like, yes, it's Alaska, and the fishing more often than not's way better than you've ever seen it probably. But you can go to Alaska and not catch fish, So
well, in the way we talked about it too with the lodge and the Michelin chef, it sounds kind of cush, but you got to be prepared for extreme elements and stuff. There's a lot of, it's not your standard fishery, right? And so you got to be prepared mentally, physically, spiritually before you go up to a place like this, right?
Yeah. Well, and textiles, I don't know if that's a word, but
bring every layer you can think of, right?
Yeah. We'll get people that get off the plane and, we're going for a 10-mile boat ride across a bay that can be horrifyingly rough, and then up a river where it can be raining sideways.
Horrifyingly rough.
Yes, and most of the times not, but you never know. And I remember a guy this last year got off and he's in like penny loafers, no socks, Dockers, and a collared shirt, and you're like, dude,
I hope he's not my client. I hope he's not mine.
Yeah. please. Like, this guy's completely clueless. And you go, if you get, it's so much more pleasant because you're going to probably see some rain. You're going to see some sun. You're going to see some in between.
Yeah.
And layering is the key. But if you're going to Alaska, don't skimp on, don't buy a little, Gorton's Fisherman yellow rubber raincoat.
Packable poncho. Yeah.
Yeah. It depends on what you're doing. If you're going, I've been on trips like those do-it-yourself trips where we did a lot of hiking up rivers and waders. So that kind of stuff, you want like a breathable Sims or, whatever brand coat. But if you're coming up to a place like where I am now, we're sitting in a boat fishing. So rubber rain gear is the way to go because it doesn't leak. Gore-Tex always at some point gets saturated. But, if you're not moving around, rubber's great because it's not leaking ever. But if you're moving around, you're gonna sweat like crazy in that. So kind of figure out what you're gonna be doing. That helps you pick your stuff. And again, don't skimp. Just you don't need a bunch of stuff because you end up wearing the same thing every day. Yeah. But you want some sort of good boots, and good old muck boots work great up there, and that kind of stuff. So anyway, you want to be prepared for. It sucks to go all that way, pay all that money, and be miserable.
Yeah, you can't just. And I'm sure there's not like a sizable big box store ready to sell you what you need, right?
Not in the village of Togiak, which is 600 people or whatever. There's one little store, but you could get stuff in Anchorage. At our place, we have a bunch of spare waders and raincoats and stuff.
Would you say that like fly anglers or conventional anglers like do better up there at any given time, or is it just kind of like just the skill of the angler, like whatever they want to use?
Well, it depends on the fishery. So for kings, we have a spike camp that didn't operate this year, but the year before it was a spay camp for kings that was affiliated with the lodge.
Sweet.
And they got excited when they got a grab every third day kind of deal.
That's me.
Yeah, it's a big river. The king numbers aren't what they used to be. So the fishing on the swing for the king there is, they caught fish.
That's
for sure.
Cool.
But the downside to that is, we were all running around. The water was high that year, so that made it tougher. To swing when everything's right at your feet, against a ripping hot bank in the trees. But those guys also, it was so buggy. Those guys are out standing in the trees in the bugs. That's where all the bugs live, is around brush and trees. Like on a lower water year, you got these big, nice sweeping turns that are just gravel where you could get 200 yards away from the trees and be okay. So in the sense of the kings, the conventional guys are going to do better. Silvers, swinging, little bunny leeches and stuff is deadly. So, and then, like you say, we have these little tributaries and stuff that will go up with the 6 weights. And that time of year, the flesh really hasn't kicked in. So it's pretty much a bead show. So if you're, if that's beneath you, you won't like it, but it's
tie up a real fancy one. Just take a long time doing it.
Right. It's like I had a famous fly fisherman guided on the Yuba 100 years ago, and I remember at the end of the day he ended up catching some on hoppers. I'd promised him it was going to be a hopper bite, and it wasn't, because it wasn't warm enough in the morning.
Okay.
And so I found some spawning salmon, so we started catching them on beads behind them, and then the hopper bite came on later. But I remember him saying, sure glad we didn't have to fish, it was essentially, I'm sure glad we didn't have to slum and fish eggs all the time. I'm like, wait a minute, we were matching the hatch. That's the whole, like, that's what they're eating. We were matching what they were eating, but
or like I talked to April Vokey about this. Just tie a leech onto the end of that egg, and now you have an egg sucking leech, and you can feel way better about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and April's cool because she goes and throws some spoons too, just to she's not one dimensional.
She does it all too, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of fly fishing for trout and dollies up there, I had a guy who brought his Tenkara rod.
Oh yeah,
and I have a couple buddies who are really into it. I haven't tried it yet.
Yeah.
I can see, like, on a little creek.
It's kind of the new internet meme in the fly tying world. I mean, it's like it's kind of the new, it's shooting fish in a barrel kind of comedy.
Yeah.
About Tenkara fishing right now.
It was interesting because he had like a 6 weight or something, and what's he got? 20 feet of line or whatever it is on the end of this thing, maybe not even that. And
like that.
He, we got a little indicator and an egg pattern, and he hooks like a 6-pound dolly.
Yeah.
And we're fishing a riffle because these salmon are spawning in there, and it maxes everything out.
Yeah. You just got to go run it. He's got to run with it.
Well, that's funny you say that, because I said, all right, now what, Holmes?
Yeah.
He goes, my feet are my drag.
Yeah.
He went taking off after it. I thought, maybe not.
Did he pull it in?
Yeah, you got it. But it was kind of cool. I guess it was sort of mano a mano.
That's cool. I'm down. Whatever, man.
But yeah, I mean, I am the last one to, if you like to fish away, who cares? That's the thing that bothers me about, especially like the conventional anglers, stereotypical perception of a fly angler of the, looking down their nose at you. And it's like, I could care less.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as it's legal and ethical, fishing whatever way gets you off, man. I don't care.
I'm with you.
I like it all.
Do it. Yeah, for sure. Whatever. And whatever works the best, really. Right. Like whatever's going to be most efficient, and,
that's my whole, I stopped guiding fly fishing years ago, other than in Alaska, because it was getting frustrating when the guy, would say, "Oh yeah, I'm very experienced," and then they couldn't throw it past my oar tip in the drift boat, and then it was my fault we didn't catch anything. Yeah. But I love that. That's what I do in the summer, especially up here in Tile when I have a minute.
Yeah.
I go down to the local creek. I have this little killer little Douglas 3-weight 7-foot,
do some small,
and I take one hopper. Like if I lose it in a tree, game over, buddy.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know. That's really cool. And then that's my favorite thing to do up in Togiak too, is go fishing those tribs for those rainbows and dollies. It's really cool.
Fun. Yeah.
In early spring, you can get them on mice too.
Yeah.
So
that's a future episode here talking about mice patterns.
Cool.
Yeah. It's gonna be a fun one to do. I want to know about like a scary encounter or something, because I mean you hear about the grizzly bears. We've talking about bugs a lot, but there's a lot of like life-threatening type scenarios you can get into in Alaska, I would say. Like is there any close calls or something like that you've had?
Yes and no. Fortunately, knock on wood, I haven't any like real crazy bear. I mean, I've been around them a ton, and generally speaking, unless you encounter a cub a sow and some cubs, or an injured one or whatever, it's not, the bear wants as much to do with you as you it. I mean, it's kind of, we can agree that we'll just stay away from each other. But that being said, it's an odd sensation being one rung removed from the top of the food chain. It's not a spot that humans are comfortable with typically. So we've had lots of bears. We're a fishing camp up there, and in both the places I've worked, we're fishing camps. And so the bears come in, they smell all that food and the trash and this.
They're like, ooh, Michelin dining.
Yes. Well, we had one night at the lodge. It was the last night of the year. It was pouring rain. Everybody was going home, and I guess the bears sensed it. So these two bears came in, and they just raged. We have very limited Wi-Fi there. I mean, it kind of comes and goes. And I had guests of mine from down here that are big game hunters. And they, like at 2 a.m, they text me and it says, "Hey, there's a bear down here." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever. Good night."
Yeah.
And I just threw my phone down.
Lots of bears here, guys.
Yeah. And I get another one. Hey, this bear, do you guys have a gun or something? And I was like, "What?" And I wrote, "Are you feeling threatened?" They're like, "Hell yes, we are. He's shaking our cabin." So we go down there and scare the bear off, and I'm like, "You wussies."
just yelling at them, clacking some pots of pans or something.
Yeah, they know to run. Yeah. I mean, you hope.
These are all grizzly bears?
All grizzlies, yeah. We don't have any black bears there. So what had happened is the bears had found that these guys' cabin was the closest to the kitchen, so where all the good smells are. And they had they just raged. They ate an entire Traeger grill that night. Just, you can imagine all the good flavors on a Traeger. They ate 2 bags of ready mixed concrete that were sitting out, which digestive issues, you would think.
Yeah, they probably didn't make it, huh?
Oh, I think they did. I mean, these
bears can eat concrete.
Oh, they're Sherman tanks with fur, man. They're unbelievable. I don't think there's much that can stop them. So they ended up finding a gallon of vinegar or 2-gallon bottle, whatever, and drank it right on these guys on the boardwalk right in front of their cabin. And so then they started ripping the 2x4s off the deck to get to the stuff that they missed.
Dude, they went crazy from the vinegar and just started ripping things apart.
Yeah, they were high on vinegar, I guess. And then we had one of those like little one-man pontoon boats that somebody must have had some, touched a fish to the pontoon or something. So they ate that and they were just raging.
Wow, man.
But as far as scare, I mean, we've had a lot of run-ins with bears over the years, but
no getting stranded anywhere or anything like harrowing like that where you're like, I'm out here for 3 days and like nobody knows where I'm at.
So I did a self-guided, I've done a few of them over the years, but self-guided float trip on, God, I can't remember the name of the river, but it was in Katmai National Park, which is for zillions of bears. And the bears weren't the issue. So it was a deal where you get flown in. It was just me and a buddy. And this time I was smart enough, unlike the time previously, that I took another buddy of mine who knew how to row a drift boat. And he was a guide, up on the Eel and the Smith and those. So the time I'd gone before, I was the only guy in the whole group who knew how to row a boat. So I ended up, being the guide the whole time and didn't get to fish. So this time I took a buddy who could share the duties. It was just me and him. And it was a 7-day trip, and it was a 40-something mile float, and it was billed as Alaska's best dry fly fishing.
Wow.
The guy said, stock up on, like, there's no real hatch, but just bring stimulators and humpies and hoppers, just big bushy stuff.
Stuff that floats.
Yep. We loaded up on that, and they drop you off on a lake in a float plane. You float through, just the absolute
they drop you off and you're done until they get you a week later or something.
Yeah. And we had no satellite phone or anything.
Man.
So you float 42 miles or whatever it was down to the next lake, and that's where they can pick you up. And it's an easy place because you can't miss the next lake, So as we're flying in, the guy goes, hey, look at that. There was a tributary creek coming into the lake, probably 3 miles above the outlet where we would normally start, where we normally drop people off. And he goes, God, are those all fish? We're like, oh yeah, those are all fish. Mm-hmm. So it's like, want me to drop you guys there and you can just row across the lake and start your journey? Yeah, drop us there. Mm-hmm. We're all excited, fired up. Yeah. And turns out we realized those were rocks that we saw from the air, but wow. There were no fish. So we had to row across this lake. And the point of all this was, since he dropped us off at a different place on the lake instead of the outlet of the river, the pilot didn't realize, he told us this later, that the river was higher than they'd ever seen it in the 20 years they'd been dropping people off there.
Of course it was.
Yeah. And so it was unbelievable. It was raging. And we were so looking forward to the first part of the trip because it goes through this just epic canyon where apparently the best dry fly fishing was. And we get in it, and after about an hour, I was riding up front. I look back at my buddy. I go, have you even seen a place where a trout could even sit? Yeah. He goes, no. I mean, it was just And so there was a big rapid on that was, class 4-ish, I guess, upper 3, whatever it was. And I'd asked the pilot about that prior. I said, we're experienced whitewater guys, but we need to know what's coming. Because there's one rapid before you get to the canyon. It's kind of the entrance to the canyon. You can't miss it. And it's pretty straightforward because you guys know what you're doing. Well, it was a whole different animal at that flow. And
from the 20-year storm or whatever.
I think it was just, there'd been a big snow melt or something because there's still snow on the ground. But anyway, this thing, we get into it and your life starts flashing before your eyes. I had a life jacket on, but we're both wearing chest waders, which is probably not the smartest idea on a rafting trip now that I think about it. But this is, day one, and we start going down this thing and it's just huge. It was one of those things that, if you're whitewater rafting in the summer somewhere in civilization, you'd be like, oh, this is cool, but they were huge boulders that were creating these big drops. And then the big rapid that he had told us about, most of it was covered up. So it was just a big steep drop. But the thing that was scary was it had one of those big keeper holes in it, recirculating. And I didn't think we were going to have the momentum to push through that. And I thought the raft was going to roll.
Oh.
And so as we got starting to descend down into this hole and about to hit the standing wave, I just threw myself forward in the front tube trying to give us a little momentum, and we kind of teetered there, and then we kept going. It was no fuss no muss, but it was more the oh shit, what could have happened. And so I thought, okay, if we had, if that thing had sucked us back in and rolled us, my buddy Kevin dies. He's in waders. and we're in snow melt water, and it's raging.
Yeah.
And that's where the canyon started, right below that. And so we might not have even been able to get out of the river. And it was so cold that, and me with a life jacket on, I probably wouldn't have gotten out either, because it was just ripping so fast that I would have been in the water so long before I got to somewhere that wasn't a canyon wall. And so that was one of those things. And so that's kind of set the tone for the day. We didn't stop until about 3 a.m. that day. We ended up doing 27 of the 40-something miles we figured out later on the first day of the trip. We were running rapids in the dark that we didn't know. And it was horrifying. I remember my wife and kids' face popping up in my mind a lot. And I was like, that's probably not a good sign when I keep seeing their faces.
Yeah.
We'd be going through, and there'd be times where it would take you 2 hours of rowing until you could change rowers. That's how crazy fast it was. Like there was no spot where you're like, okay, let's trade. It was nuts. And then the guy had warned us that there's lots of braids with like sweeper trees and stuff going across. And man, if we'd hit one of those in the dark, somehow, we just like, we'd be going and like, dude, what do you see? I'm like, I don't know. I see kind of like a little white explosion up ahead. I guess go left, and finally like at 3:30, whatever it was, it finally gotten dark, but we'd been looking for a place to stop. That's why we went so far. You could not find a place to stop because the water was up. First it was a canyon, so it was just the water up to canyon walls. There were no beaches. And then once we got out of the canyon, you're flowing through this, tundra, foresty stuff, and the water's up into the trees. There's nowhere to get out. Finally, we found this little tiny beach, and the outfitter provides the raft and the camping gear and stuff. So we'd never set this tent up, and we're tired, frazzled beyond belief. Your nerves are just on fry.
Mentally exhausted. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we get to this beach. My buddy Kevin, we're trying to get this tent together, and the mosquitoes, oh my God, the worst mosquitoes I've ever encountered. And they're just, you look down, you got 70 of them on each hand, wow. And they're just, and you're going crazy, and you're done already. And then you add all that.
And they're as big as hummingbirds out there, right?
That's what, I mean, they're just, it's horrible. So we're trying to set this tent up because all we want to do is get in there and like shut the door and at least be out of the bugs. Yeah. And we can't get set up because it's a tent we're not familiar with. We're tired and all that, and it's dark. And my buddy's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna sleep under it. And that was kind of the moment where of levity, and I started laughing. Yeah. I'm like, all right, dude, we're cool. Hang on, let me get a flashlight. And I looked at the, do what dudes don't do, and looked at the instructions. And we got the tent set up, and
you had to hit rock bottom first, though.
Yes, we totally hit rock bottom. And we woke up to a beautiful day, and the crazy thing was the river was raging so loud that it was like this weird waterboard torture kind of thing. It was like audio torture. It was like having to listen to the Spice Girls all the time or something.
Dude, but that like at a supreme volume, right?
Oh yeah, it was finally the next day we got into some calmer water, and it was unbelievable. I've never had water where the sound of water bugged me like that.
Man. I don't know.
Just make it stop. Make it stop.
Yeah, I don't know if I could handle that, dude. I've newly been experiencing some audio issues myself. Just I had a repaired eardrum, and I mistreated my own ears with loud heavy metal for
the rock and roll era.
A long time, and had never wore earplugs. And I guess I don't have like a tinnitus. It's not like a ringing, although I do get a little bit of that, like when everything's real quiet. But no, certain sounds have been real grating on me. And man, if I was stuck in a spot like that with that extreme volume, I don't know if I would phase it out. Like if you filter it out somehow, you're to survive, but I don't know. It's crazy. I never thought of that.
Yeah, it was rugged. So the next day we wake up and we've gotten through that part. We get to where we're like, God, there's not going to be any dry fly fishing here. This thing's up in the trees, The water was clear, but it was up. And then we start looking around, and all the any soft spot, there was a billion, like probably literally a billion salmon fry that were migrating out. And my buddy goes, well, I have some, fry or smolt patterns. I'm like, okay. And in these little backwaters, the bite was so awesome because a lot of times the little soft spot would be directly downstream of you, and you throw out and let that raging current push it down directly below you. And then you'd strip back towards you. And it was like just straight line crushing bites. It was the only thing I could compare it to is pulling plugs for steelhead or something. Just, just like rip your elbow out of its socket kind of bites.
They were hungry because the water was so crazy. Maybe they hadn't been eaten. Or been
and they were just gorging because that high water might have sort of triggered the whole out migration of the smolt. Is probably what was, and so they were just feeding like crazy. And just because the way it laid out, a lot of these spots, you'd have to swing it all the way down to where it's directly below you, and then you start stripping back towards you. It was just, it was so awesome. Wow. We caught so many fish. It was, 100. We actually counted one day because we're like, how many are we catching? I bet we're catching 100. And so we did. And it was, over 100 of these 3 to 6 or 8 pound rainbows and dollies a day. And it was insane. It was probably the best fishing. He and I both said, that's probably the best fishing we've ever done. It was incredible. Yeah. And so because we'd gone so far so fast, we did whatever, 27 of the 40 something miles the first day. Mm-hmm. We had to really slow our roll down to
dial it back a little bit.
Yeah. So we would, get up leisurely, and then we'd fish and have a nice breakfast, and then we'd float like a quarter mile, stop.
I think you guys earned that leisurely end of the trip though, from the beginning.
Well, yeah, and that was 6 days of that. So the last day though, so we get down, and this is not harrowing, but it kind of was because the bugs. I mean, the bugs were horrific the whole time. It was like head net country the whole trip, which I never wear a head net in Togiak, and this was, it was mandatory.
Yeah.
But anyway, we had that fishing all the way down, and we just stop and pull over and have a fire and put these 2 lawn chairs up and just shoot the shit for a couple hours and get the bug again. So it was pretty leisurely. So by the time we got down to day 7, well, night 6 anyway, it's like, okay, he's picking us up tomorrow. He said he'd try to be there by 9. So let's float down to this spot and just, we've caught, our cup runneth over,
Yeah.
It's like, what else do we need to do? We've got enough fish. So let's just kind of get down there early, and we'll break down our gear and set up our camp and just chill, hopefully get out of here early tomorrow. Well, what the pilot had said is when you get down to where I'm going to pick you up, you'll see like 3 aluminum John boats on the bank. And it wasn't actually down to the lake. We were like 2 or 3 miles above the next lake, but there's a wide spot on the river. And that's where a few daily fly out lodges fly their people in, and they bring a little jet motor and slap it on one of those John boats. And then they run people around on that lower end of the river for half a day kind of deal. So we did encounter at the last day, a couple of jet boats and stuff. But anyway, we got down there and saw the jet boats, and we're like, okay, we'll just have dinner and chill and just have a leisurely evening. Again, the water was high, and you're sitting as you're entering the next lake, the gradient has really flattened out. So as far as the eye can see, again, it's like a rice field. Yeah, there was nowhere to set up a tent. Yeah, there was nowhere to set up a tent. It was from 6 inches to 3 feet deep everywhere.
Wow.
And so we're like, oh crap.
Yeah.
And why did we hurry down here? And so
you guys gotta snuggle up on the boat.
Yeah. So, I said, I guess we're just gonna have to stay up all night. Uh-huh. So I said, let's row down to that lake and go fish the lake. All right. So we rowed down, not knowing if we're gonna be able to row back up this raging river. And we go out, and it's kind of getting, darkish. It's twilighty, and we're chilling out, and it was kind of cool. I feel like it was kind of like the size of Donner Lake.
Okay.
But it was really a cool feeling. It was just a calm evening, and there's not a light. Like, it's weird to be on a lake where there's not $1 billion house every 50 yards, on the bank. It was just like, wow, this is, what probably California was like before people got here.
Sure.
It was wild to think, God, I don't even know where the nearest human is right now. And that's such a rare thing.
Yeah.
But so we went, and we thought we'd catch some fish on the drop off where the river came in. We didn't. So I said, there's some weeds over there. Have you ever caught a pike on top water? He goes, no. I'm like, all right. So we went and caught some pike, and then the bugs are just fierce. And then the the sun went down, so you just couldn't see anymore. So let's row back up to the campsite. Maybe we can just, put our hoods on or head nets, put some rubber gloves on, and we'll just have to try to sleep on this raft. And so we row back up, and that takes a while, and which is good because we're just killing time at this point. We get back up there, and it's probably like 4 a.m. or something. We try to lay on the tubes of this raft, and we both lay down for like 30 seconds. It's like, dude, I can't do this. Me neither. The sound of the bugs was just too much.
Symphony.
And so
Mosquito Symphony.
it was Mosquito Metallica on 11, man.
Metallica did the symphony orchestra thing, man. Metallica.
That's right. With San Francisco.
Yeah.
But so here's the this was the miserable part. So we decided the only way we would be able to get some sleep is if we took turns rowing each other up and down the river for like half-hour stints. Just to have enough sort of momentum to keep the bugs to a dull roar. And so one guy would sit in the bow and like try to catch 20 minutes of sleep, and then we'd rotate. And so we rowed up and down the river all night.
Wow.
And then the guy finally came, and we're just like, okay, over it. It took about, even though that was one of the coolest, most epic adventures, it took about 3 years before we even spoke of it again.
Well, wait, is this the same story though? We were chatting a little bit before I started recording. You mentioned a shooting star, and I don't know if you mentioned it during the actual telling of the story on the podcast. Was that part of the story?
The shooting star was the first day of guiding.
Oh, okay. I got these two stories mixed up. My bad.
That's all right. There's been a lot of stories.
Yeah.
I'm a fucking idiot. I'm a fucking idiot.
Well, it was leading into something. I was trying to make a fancy segue, because that's kind of a paranormal experience. And I always ask all my guests if they've ever had one. And I wanted to ask you if they're, time up in Alaska, time in the woods on the Trinity, all over, all the places you've been. Have there been anything weird enough that gave you goosebumps, or maybe something you actually saw or experienced or heard or what?
No, I haven't had that. I remember camping on the Mad River one time in a canyon, me and two buddies, and we heard what we were all pretty sure was a woman being stabbed.
Whoa. It's not exactly paranormal or supernatural, but just terrifying. Yeah.
Terrifying. And you're out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. And we realized that it was that's the mountain lion call at night. And we woke up, what kind of brought it all to light was we woke up and we spooked one across the river, and thinking, I wonder if we got up just in time. I don't know. But that I haven't had a whole lot of.
You needed to mix in like a peacock call in that sound, so you have like the child yelling help along with that woman screaming like they're being stabbed, and it's all sorts of weird things going on.
Those things are creepy. But I spent a lot of time on the Trinity River, right in the middle of Bigfoot country, and
right in the thick of where like the Patterson film was made, right?
Yes, in fact, I had some guys on the Trinity River one year. Turns out they were Bigfoot aficionados,
like me.
And they said, they just casually. I didn't know they were Bigfoot fans at this point, but they said, where do you stay up here? I said, a place called Bluff Creek. And they're like, what? Whoa, what?
Yeah.
The Bluff Creek? I'm like, I don't know. Like, they wanted to get off the river, cut their salmon fishing trip short.
Just go, hell yeah.
So I could show them Bluff Creek, and we got to the bridge, and they stood there, and they told me that's where that greeny fish was. And they were just it was kind of like, oh, it's like going to Yankee Stadium or something.
Yeah, totally, man. That's rad. That's funny.
They were, and if you're a squatcher, or a Bigfoot enthusiast, as I like to say, every one of you folks has some little bit of compelling evidence that makes those of us who aren't so sure there's Bigfoot go, like these guys had me, because they're like, you believe, you think there's Bigfoot? I'm like, hell no.
Yeah.
And then they start telling you these things, and you're like, well, okay, maybe I'm wrong. But
you just got to find which side of the line you fall on,
Yeah, well,
which box you're going to put yourself in.
There's a canyon on the Klamath River just in that same area where Bluff Creek is, and just a little above it. and it's called the Red Cap Gorge, and it's just once you get in a drift boat and you make it alive through the first two rapids, there's no getting out. I mean, you're in this just sheer walls, and it. To me, I always tell people, I think this is where Bigfoot lives. There's just it's so remote. And so I was thinking, I told my buddy back at there's this big husky guy, I said, screw this fishing stuff. Let's run Bigfoot tours.
Dude, yeah, there you go. You'll never have the expectation to provide the fish in this scenario, the Bigfoot, right? You just got to take them along for the ride. Right. And, you make a little footprint in the sand the day before. Oh no, man, you can't be a hoaxer. Just gotta take them out and it's a tour. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, because my thought was I'll put my buddy Dale in a Bigfoot suit about once every 10th trip. All you got to do is like at 12:02 look out, go off a distant rock. Man, I wonder what the amount of money has been made on situations like that, over the years. Yeah, I mean it actually would be a really fun. I mean, without the hoaxy part, because it's super. I mean, for a non Bigfoot believer like myself, going through there, you go, well, if something lived out here, this would be the place he'd probably live. It's a fun one to entertain. I love everything weird and conspiracy, supernatural, ghosts. I love all that stuff. I read about it all the time, man. And I go on different kicks here and there and kind of dig into it. And I mean, I think I've mentioned it before with Bigfoot, though. I think that the most compelling thing for me is just the sheer cultural, like widespread cultural significance of it, where there's like stories of the same type of thing across so many different cultures for so long. Totally. That, I mean, is enough for me to go, okay, maybe. And I don't have anything past maybe. I don't know what it is. And so I like entertaining it. I love talking about it and figuring trying to read about it and stuff. But I guess since this is the fly tying podcast, I should ask you, what was the last fly that you tied? I actually, it was very recent during silver season. Oh yeah. Or actually, no, I was more recent than that. Over at Pyramid, I tied I wanted you to say on that Alaska trip that so bad, like that was the last one. No, I have a fly tying kit over at my trailer in Pyramid as we speak. So, nice. A Tui chub, sort of close, semi-close facsimile. Like I say, I can a little bit of marabou and crosscut bunny. Yeah. I can do okay. I've tied a lot of attractor patterns over the years for coho and kings and that stuff, where I have fat sausage fingers and and declining vision. So two things that you need the opposite of for tying flies, man. When you get into I'm not going to tie a size 21 zebra midge. I can tell you that right now. I couldn't even tie it on, let alone tie it. Yeah. And so I actually was thinking about it the other day. I would love to. I've never taken a class. I've just winged it. And so I think that's part of it. I never had the foundation of, really I'd probably be a lot better if I actually knew what I was doing, palmering and all that good stuff. Yeah. I still don't know all that stuff, man. I'm still learning. I've only been doing it for like 3 or 4 years, and I'm very not technical about it, very freestyle about it. And I'll go down certain things and dig into this or that. And I'll take a little class here and there or something. But yeah, I love it, man. A lot of fun. Yeah. I mean, even if you don't fish, it's a cool art form, For sure. And I don't know when I'll have time to do it, but I was thinking about that, I guess, when I was tying stuff over there. It'd be nice to kind of graduate past leeches. Or maybe not, man. I fish leeches mostly, I think. I am up all the time. Kind of a catch-all, lots of things eat leechy, fishy looking things. So it's something that I'm a little barbaric in my techniques, but I've caught, zillions of fish on god-awful creations of my own. So I thought it would be something that you maybe hadn't done in a long time. It's cool to know that you're still doing it. What do you think are a few things that fly tyers and anglers can learn from conventional anglers?
It's interesting. There was, unfortunately, he's passed away now, but Bill Lowe was a pretty well-known guide in our area, fly guy.
Kind of a local legend, yeah.
Yeah, great guy, just always happy and good mood. But he said, "Hey, let's will you take me steelhead plug fishing sometime?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why?" Because, well, we do a lot of swinging for steelhead, and you guys are more effective at it with the plug, and I just want to see your colors and the actions, and so I think there's a lot of stuff both ways that can be figured out. Like we do a lot of bobber fishing on with conventional gear for steelhead and salmon, and the drag free, the mend and the drag free drift is essential, and obviously that's something that the fly angler oftentimes is more efficient at. And so, because I'll go, okay, guys, I'll be telling you guys how to bobber fish. Okay, you just want to mend like you're fly fishing, and they look at you because the ones that have fly fish.
Why would you think that is? Because there's more there's a more manual nature to it. You can tweak things a little bit differently to mend more specifically in different ways, easier or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Because with a spinning rod, you don't have the weight of that line to kind of manipulate stuff.
Yeah,
and so
that's where your bobber helps you, right? That's the only thing moving you over.
Right. So, and some length to your rod, but yeah, there's that's why I think it's just fishing's so cool, because there's so many ways to skin the cat, and to pigeonhole yourself in one is just limiting yourself. When I talk about fly fishing, people go, "Oh, do you fly fish too?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I don't do it professionally other than in Alaska where it's easy." But it's kind of my little thing I like to do just for fun. But my famous quote is, "I like fly fishing, but I like catching fish better."
Yeah.
So as you said earlier, there are, it's whatever tool works best. There are times,
or what you enjoy, right? Yeah, either one.
Right. But if you're going small stream trout fishing or something, which I think is kind of where fly fishing originated, there's hard to beat some sort of aquatic invertebrate that's tied on a hook, out of feathers and glue, right?
Yeah.
You could throw a Panther Martin spinner in there, that little hare's ear or something is going to be something that looks a lot more like what they're eating. And so the parts, like I guess I just love small stream stuff. That's what I grew up doing. But when I look at, and I, I'm not dissing on anybody, because whatever floats your boat.
Yeah.
But the kind of fly fishing I'm not interested in, and I haven't done it, so maybe I shouldn't. But kind of like the trolling a bunch of teasers for marlin, and then you get one right up behind the boat and you flop them. You don't even really.
Yeah, I hear you.
That's, to me, it's like I don't need to catch one on a fly bad enough to want to do that. If I'm going to catch a marlin, just catch it.
Yeah.
But so some of that stuff is, again, not for me. If you're into it, more power to you. It doesn't bother me, but just I enjoy, I think, as a lot of people do, the whole sort of flow of the cast and watching something drift and that kind of stuff. So
that's why I've kind of gravitated towards the spay casting stuff, because I cast a whole lot more than I catch, and it's way more enjoyable for me. But that being said, you can't do that kind of fishing everywhere. And so I go to different spots, and I'm going to have to do something else, and I'm totally open to doing it, whatever's ethical and efficient and stuff. And if I have a choice, I'll go somewhere where I can do the kind of fishing that I want to do,
Sure.
But yeah, that's what's so cool about it. Just like you said, if you're open to it and you're not going to be closed-minded about one way or the other, you can have a blast any way. And there's so many different ways to do it,
Absolutely. The first time I ever even knew what was introduced to spay rod was on the Togiak River back in, this is the late 90s, early 2000s. And Mike Perouse, who is the current G. Loomis rod rep in the Northwest. He was my roommate, and he was guiding too. And all the guides had a little, see who can catch one of these kings on a fly contest.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a lunch break, and we all took off upriver to this gravel bar. And Mike had these crazy long spay rods, whatever those were, and I had a single-handed, 9-weight or something. And I'm out there to the tops of my waders, splat behind me, just trying to making a, get it far enough out to get a swing. Mike comes out with this spay rod. And I was like, what the hell did you just do? And he's like, swing. Oh, fish on. I'm like,
oh man.
Oh, that is a tool for this big water. I was just,
hell yeah.
I was like, I had never even heard of the thing before. Obviously, they've been around in Scotland and whatever forever. But, that's classic example, though, of, well, that's another tool in the old.
And you even talk about something that does sound boring, kind of, or maybe just, I don't know, less sporty. Like the kind of teasing in the big marlin or something, then throwing a fly at it to get it. Like the one that does entice me there is the mako shark fishing, like where like they do that and they chum in the shark, whatever, and that's coming up in your sight fishing, tossing it and watching. Oh man, I gotta do it.
That's like Conway Bowman does.
Yeah. I'm hoping he's on the show this season. I've been working on it. So,
that looks fun. Well, that's a little different because you're casting to a thing that's moving around. To
your worst nightmare. You're casting to a nightmare. Yeah.
Well, we used to go to Tomales Bay and fish for leopard sharks with bait. Yeah. And one year, I don't know if the tide was just right or whatever, they were cruising around just over these eelgrass beds, with their dorsals out and just feeding on stuff. I don't know what they're hunting down, but I thought, that would be cool to catch one of those on a fly. I bet you could flop some streamer out in front of one and get them to go. And we never got around to doing it, but
I want to do that for sure. I see it on Instagram. I just don't.
Oh, really?
Don't get down to the Bay Area to do it. Definitely.
Yeah. Kids and jobs and life kind of get in the way of that stuff.
Little things. dude, JD, that's all the questions I have for you, man. We did them all.
Okay. Well, that's all the answers I got for you. So good.
Thank you. Thank you so much for spending some time with me, dude. I appreciate it big time.
And, man, I'm honored. Thank you.
Yeah. And wishing you and your family Happy New Year. We're almost there. I hope 2023 is great for the both of us, my dude.
I'm down with that. Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Matt. And it's good to talk to you as always. And we need to go fishing one of these days.
Let's do it. JD and I could have kept talking about fish and other crap for a couple more hours. I hope you enjoyed something a little different this episode. I know the show is called Secret Society of Fly Tires, and JD may not exactly fit that mold specifically, but I'm hoping that's why you listen to this dumb podcast. I try to do things a little differently. I hate rules.
So don't invite me to game night.
Don't tell me what to do, unless you're telling me to enjoy a delicious meal or something. Then I might do exactly what you tell me to do.
How much raw chicken can you eat if you get sick? I don't know the answers.
You might be saying to yourself, why did Matt interview someone who doesn't tie a whole lot of flies on this fly tying podcast when he hasn't interviewed my favorite fly tyer? I just told you that I do what I want. Maybe me doing what I want and your favorite fly tyer will intersect someday, though. I still love to hear who you'd like me to talk to, or ideas I should talk about on the show. Email me, DM me. I'm available. There's lots of big fly tying celebrities out there that I want to talk to. But remember, I'm going to be doing this show forever, so I got time. I just learned through social media that award-winning actor Viggo Mortensen is a fly angler, and he even brought his rod on the set of one of the Lord of the Rings movies. He was fishing between scenes. I'm going to add him to my list, and I can almost guarantee you that he'll never be on the show. But that's his problem, not mine. He's going to need me someday. And one of these days, one of these celebrities is going to agree to come on the show, and they're going to nerd out about tying flies, and then I'm going to ask them about their paranormal experiences, and they're going to spill a bunch of Hollywood Illuminati secrets. Just you watch. That is my real dream, and don't laugh at it. It's the perfect goal for my ridiculous show. I just realized that we're 5 episodes into season 2, and I haven't even asked you if you like the new logo yet. My brother gave me a little refresh, and I love it. Colors will change when I feel like changing them. He gave me some options like a swell bro would. He also wanted me to tell you that there's a secret butthole in a layer of the Photoshop file behind the new logo. And maybe even more extreme pornographic images and videos in there somewhere too. You'll never know. Stare at it for long enough though, and you might see something.
Don't just stare at it, eat it.
Some things are best left unseen though, right? Seriously, it might be a butthole that you don't want to see. And there are probably more of those out there than buttholes that you do want to see. I'll leave you with that little tidbit of wisdom and say thank you for listening. You're sticking with me through thick and thin, and I appreciate you for that. I'm going to drop in some information on orgs that I feel are doing their best to help others find positivity in this dark hellhole of insanity now and end this episode. Project Healing Waters brings a high-quality, full-spectrum fly fishing program to an ever-expanding number of veterans in need at over 200 locations nationwide. Project Healing Waters programs meet regularly throughout the year with volunteers teaching the basics and advanced techniques while building long-term relationships. It's much more than a one-time fly fishing trip. The program provides basic fly fishing, fly casting, fly tying, and rod building classes for participants whose skills range from beginners who have never fished before to those with prior fly fishing and tying experience. All fly fishing and tying equipment is provided to the participants at no cost. Fishing trips, both one-day and multi-day, are also provided free of charge to participants. Visit projecthealingwaters.org to learn more. Fishing the Good Fight is breaking down walls, smashing taboos, and building community. They believe that experiences in nature are an important part of caring for one's mental health. Less than 20% of men struggling with mental illness and/or substance abuse are receiving professional support. The combination of a healthy therapeutic outlet, talk therapy, and a strong community will lead to mental well-being. Men face specific challenges when it comes to addressing mental health issues. According to Mental Health America, 6 million men living in the U.S. suffer from depression. In a National Center for Health Statistics studies, nearly 1 in 10 men reported experiencing some form of depression, but less than half sought treatment. 70% of all people who die by suicide are men. That's from the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Men are often reluctant to seek help, particularly for depression, and are far less likely to access professional mental health services than women. Men make up less than 25% of people treated for depression and/or substance abuse. For a lot of men, Fishing the Good Fight program, such as a retreat, is the first time they have opened up about struggles they faced, and 100% of men who attended a recent retreat indicated that they would seek professional help after the treatment. If you've ever wondered about your own mental health and wanted to improve your quality of life, Fishing the Good Fight can provide the tools, resources, and support to guide you along your wellness journey. FishingTheGoodFight.org has more information.
This episode of the Secret Society of Fly Tires is brought to you by Shirt. Shirt is a brand new product that is sure to wow you and everybody you know. Act fast. This introductory offer won't last long. Shirt is flying off the shelves and supplies will soon be depleted. Buy your shirt today and be one of the first people in your area to be a shirt owner. You'll love it, I promise. Buy shirt now. This episode of the Secret Society of Fly Tires is brought to you by guide-sourced artisanal fish goo straight from Alaska. This delectable canned product comes straight from the fish processing plants in Alaska. It is canned nearly in accordance with some FDA guidelines. It's liquid at room temperature, but very viscous. It can sometimes thicken and harden at cooler temperatures, but you don't need to keep it in the fridge. It's shelf-stable. Product not actually shelf-stable. And it's ready to eat for any occasion. You can even feed this goo to a baby if you wanted. If you had one, I mean. If you had a baby, you could fill its bottle with this goo and it could drink it to get smart and strong. That's all I'm trying to say.
Please note that this is not a real advertisement, and the company, brand, entity, or product mentioned in the preceding ad in no way endorses, agrees with, or knows about this podcast.